Welcome back to the Sports Complex, a Monday edition of the Sports Complex here on the Horn. I'm your host, Patrick Davis. On today's show, we will talk a little bit about the preseason football happening this weekend. The Cowboys play. Did we learn anything? Did we learn much? D'Amico Ryans talks to the press about the Texans game. AP preseason polls, AP preseason All-Americans were put out today. Patrick's Big Fat Poll. Big week in the AL West. Some audio from E and Rod B talking about offensive line play, Cowboys in the NFL, and some more noise from Sark and the presser he did today. All that coming up on the show here on the Sports Complex today on Monday. If you want to join the conversation, 512-337-3776, 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. That is how you can join the conversation with us here on the Horn. And let's get into it. It was a crazy weekend in the AOS, so I want to get into that in a little bit. Not a fun weekend for Astros or Rangers fans, but we'll get into that in a little bit. It was an okay weekend if you were an NFL fan for the Cowboys or Texans, because at least for the Cowboys, it does not seem to matter too much preseason. Mike McCarthy doesn't seem to care too much. The main news, of course, that came out of the Cowboys preseason game, if we got anything, was that DeMarvion Overshown suffered an injury that is believed to be an ACL tear, so everyone's assuming he will miss the entire season and hopefully come back bigger and better next year. We will start the show by playing you what he had to say, Mike McCarthy had to say about DeMarvion Overshown.
Well, I mean, you never want to see, any of your guys get hurt. And that's what's so tough about these games. So we had a couple young guys go down, and you say your prayers, and hopefully the imaging, points in the right direction. So, yeah, I mean, he's had an incredible camp. We talk about him, seems like almost every other day. So, I just hope he's okay.
Yeah, that was a post-game press conference before we knew the extent of the injury. We know DeMarvion is going to be out for a while now. So we do know that was Mike McCarthy talking about him after the post-game. That's basically the main thing we got out of the preseason game. Of course, they lost to the Seahawks, but didn't play anybody. The Cowboys have not played anybody really in the preseason so far. They've not, starters-wise. They've played other teams. They've not played their own starters. So we haven't really seen any gelling. If we've seen what Dak Prescott looks like after, not having his best year last year, what his progress has been, we don't know. And we know that they have not done any joint practices. So unless Mike McCarthy comes out and says today or later this week that his starters are actually going to play in preseason week 3, which a lot of teams do not, there is that bye week in between, so you can do that. You can put some people in. It would seem as if really none of the main starters for the Cowboys will see any playing time against anyone from any other team until week 1 of the regular season. And we know Sean McVay was more as, he at least was for the preseason. Now, he may still do some combined practices, but there is some things of, hey, well, you don't want to play your best players because, that's how injuries happen, and we don't want any injuries to happen. So, we prefer to not put them in, and, only bad things can happen. And I think that's a very short-sighted way to look at it, to say only bad things can happen if you have a joint practice and maybe there's some injuries or fighting there, or if you have put some guys into a preseason game. I would have liked to see him take a drive, maybe just put him in for a little bit. He talks earlier in this year of this preseason about, using Mozzie Smith sparingly and putting him in different reps so he knows more what it's like to be playing on special teams and in specialty packages. But if you're going to do that, then wouldn't you want to put your starters in for a little bit to show them what it's going to be like to come in and spell and, not come in as a starter? It's one of the many things that Mike McCarthy has done this preseason, going into this season, that may work. He may have a master plan and his play calling and his analytics people that are going to be over there to help him out with game management and, letting Dan Quinn really take the defense off of his hands and let them have that. And all he has to really focus on is play calling and just, overseeing a few things. And, none of these joint practices, no one playing in preseason. Maybe it all works. Maybe he's got it figured out. And this is what the Cowboys needed. That's why they were screwing up in the postseason. Not in the regular season. They're okay in the regular season. They're winning 12 games a year. But maybe that's why you get so far into this season and you get into the playoffs and then you can't come through because of game management or just some poor play. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's his theory. I don't know. It just everything you've seen of it doesn't give me any faith that this offense is going to be playing at a level it needs to be playing at. I get it. If you want to say the thing he did for Dak Prescott, what the thing the Cowboys did for Dak Prescott, you can say, sure, they went out and got Brandon Cooks. They added a real second wide receiver for him that he hasn't had since Amari Cooper, where he had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So now you can say, look, now there's two real threats. He feels good with Jake Ferguson. We have to see how that works once he gets in, but Jake Ferguson didn't play. Jake Ferguson wasn't getting in there and getting in receptions. So if we don't see Jake Ferguson, we don't know his – I would like to see them get a little bit. I mean, you can practice all day long, but how many times are you going to say, oh, well, I threw an interception, but it doesn't matter because it was it's against us and it's our defense and it's a scrimmage. How many times can you do that to where when you get into a game situation in week 1, week 2, and this won't last into week 7, 8, or 9, but I don't know if Mike McCarthy will either. So if we say, how many times can you be in that situation? And then go into week 1 or week 2 and still have that urgency and consistency, hey man, we need to step up because we're playing in a division with the Philadelphia Eagles, with the Giants that are trying to step it up. I'm not as worried about the Commanders, but maybe Sam Howell's great. I just would like to see Mike McCarthy have a little bit more urgency on this team. It does not seem like he does, but maybe that's just that's how he comes off. Maybe that's what it is. We also saw in the preseason game, they did not play Tony Pollard. So we got to see the other running backs. And Malik Davis and Rico Dowdle did okay. Deuce Vaughn did not have a great game. He was not, his rushing off the line, I think he averaged like 2 yards per carry or somewhere around there. So not a good enough line. So, the running back depth is going to be an issue. And when you're not showing us Tony Pollard, once again, you're not showing us Tony Pollard. We don't know. We know in practice you say he's playing great, but, we play audio of D'Amico Ryans talking about, man, you can have your Dameon Pierce practice all day long, but until he feels a defender really coming after him and not pulling up or not, nothing in a drill, but in a game situation, it takes a little bit. And Tony Pollard hasn't seen that in quite a while. So all of those things tell me that this may be a slower start off for the Cowboys to get motivated, to get up there and get ready to play at the level you need to be in. If you just haven't even put on a pair of pads in a game and walked into the stadium and felt that in a year, personally, it seems like you're overthinking to try and do the things that work for other teams that you are not, as opposed to doing things that you know will work. And you can say, yes, we have to take a risk that there may be injuries, but you're going to have to take that risk week 1. You have to take that risk as soon as you step on the field. And I mean, you're taking that risk in practice, but yeah, I get there's a little bit more elevated chance of risk in a game situation. But to, put bubble wrap on your team for all training camp and preseason and then expect them to be ready in week 1 doesn't seem like the best plan to me. Just doesn't seem like the best plan to me. The Texans, however, on a different plan. They are now, they've dropped both preseason games. They did not look great. They get a turnover early in this game and are inside the 10 and can't score. So there's things that the Texans. This is going to be a much longer season for the Texans than I wanted, than a lot of people wanted. But because the Texans are starting to get beat up, because they don't have that depth, because they are rebuilding right now, they've had to cancel their joint practices. They were supposed to be going to New Orleans. I feel for every Houston Texans beat writer right now that was about to go enjoy a week in New Orleans, and that got canceled, and they got to stay in town. Especially got the wife and kids, you got to stay at home. You could have gone to New Orleans for 3 or 4 days to cover the Texans. I feel bad for you guys. Here's D'Amico Ryans on canceling practice, the joint practice with the Saints before the 3rd preseason.
Yeah, with canceling the joint practice with the Saints is where we are as a team, a little banged up. So I thought it's in the best interest of our team, right, and putting our guys first that, we should do the joint practices. And thankful to Dennis and the Saints for the opportunity to have the joint practice and, with them working with us being understandable. Also thankful to our support staff, probably putting them in a bind right now. But they've been very helpful. Everybody's been on board with what we're doing. And one thing we always talk about is, team first mentality, and that went into the decision. So thankful for, Cal and his support, and also our support staff.
So on the flip side, we talk about Mike McCarthy and years of experience as a head coach, all of these things, and of knowledge of being a winning coach in Green Bay, having 2 winning seasons with Dallas, but still not feeling like they're really ready to be a Super Bowl team. And then this offseason, just from him going to the play calling to how they've handled everything, I don't have a ton of faith. This is showing DeMeco Ryans, I think, a bit more of his inexperience as head coaching. He's somebody on this Texan staff that pretty much everybody on this Texan staff is doing the highest job they have ever done. So there are worries as you get through the season. Are you able to continually make the right decisions and not kind of shoot yourself in the foot and have to backtrack and say, oh man, we learned that? How much learning on the job is there going to be? And this one seems to be one that you had a joint practice with Miami. You say, cool, that's going to be great. And then let's do, what, Dennis Allen hit us up down in New Orleans. Houston and New Orleans are pretty close. Let's do a joint practice with them too. We need our guys to work. We need our guys to work because they're young. We want to get as much practice as we can because we're playing, like, this whole season is really more of a learning curve of, we know that the Texans are not going to be a playoff team. So this is all about the team progressing, and the more you can practice with the other teams, the more you can progress. However, not thinking ahead of, we're going to have some issues of depth because we just don't have the amount of guys. So as much as we want to get C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson or Tank Dell or any of these younger guys some more work, we don't want to get our veterans that are hired guns. They don't really want to be doing this and working as hard as they are as these 21-year-old kids, the guys that are 31. And we don't need them to get beat up. We need them to be healthy. And the players behind that aren't going to make the roster, then why are we having them go to joint practices? Because they're not really going to help us, because they're not going to be playing on that level and probably not going to be with the team in 2 years. So you have to start working on some other things. So it's good that DeMeco was able to make the audible and change plans and say it's not worth it for us to go over there. It's going to lower morale because we are beat up. The Saints are going to be more prepared, and we don't need to do that. We need to go work on ourselves for a week so we can kind of go into the season with a little bit better feel for it, as opposed to going to Miami for a team that is a playoff team competing for their division, and we're not there yet. And then we play against them, and they beat us. Now we're going to play the Saints, and the Saints are competing for their division solely in the fact that that division is not very good right now. But you can go back to Houston and work on some things that you need to work on. Here's DeMeco Ryans talking about what canceling the joint practices means for the practices that you now going to have this week, instead of just doing drills against other teams, things you can work on when you stay in Houston.
I was just looking at our team and where we are now, just felt that it wouldn't have been as productive as we would have liked it to be if we went to New Orleans. But the flip side of it is we get the opportunity to treat this week as a normal in-season game week for us. So I think there is benefits to that for our whole entire team, our coaching staff, to be able to go through the process of a normal in-season week. And we'll see. We're not fully game planning against the Saints, but we'll just go through how we'll operate with the in-season schedule, and I think that'll be beneficial to our guys.
So a little bit more practice, and this seems to be, too, seeing some of your blind spots as a coach, saying, man, our planning hasn't been there. We're not ready as a coaching staff to be there. So we need to take this week to get used to what a regular season week is, because we've been treating everything as camp. And as coaches, when there isn't a former head coach on this staff, when there's not the people in your organization that have really done it at this level, you may have to go in and say, we need a preseason week of what our practices are going to look like, and how we're going to handle game planning and getting ready. We need to be ready as coaching staffs and, get our situations ready and training to play against a team. And, we're behind the 8 ball. We thought we'd be more ready than we are. And that's what it seems DeMeco Ryans realized. And I don't know who else they have working behind the scenes that may have been able to tell them, guys, slow it down. you may have D'Amico Ryans when he came in probably had a bit more hopes for this season that you saw. CJ Stroud's not going to be there. We'll play a clip talking about CJ Stroud in a second, but he's not going to be ready to be necessarily offensive rookie of the year this year. It may take him a little bit more time. That your wide receiver core, even though Tank Dell looks good, Nico Collins, Robert Woods is playing well, you're probably not going to have a breakout number one wide receiver. Dameon Pierce is good, but if they're going to load up on the line, pass blitz a lot, they may be able to get to Dameon Pierce some too. The defense is going to have some holes in it. We know all of these things. So maybe we should take a step back, focus on the basics again, as opposed to trying to expedite the process. But that being said, you can still take the positives of playing some of your starters in these preseason games, and a guy like that is Juice Scruggs on the O-line, the center they drafted with the injury to Queensberry, where he has had to step up, and that position battle that was going to be there kind of went away with the injury. So Juice Scruggs stepping up, if he's able to be there and be a long-term center for CJ Stroud, that would be a huge step forward in building this lineup that the Texans want going forward. Here's D'Amico Ryans today talking about Juice Scruggs and his progress.
I thought Juice did a really nice job of communicating, first and foremost. At that center position, we ask a lot of him in communicating. And you see a young guy as a rookie and him handle the communication that he has to handle up front is very impressive with how far along he is to be such a young player. So very encouraged with where Juice is and knowing how much better he's going to be as he continues to get reps and continues to play with, the same guys around him. So it's impressive to see.
Yeah, Juice Scruggs' progress coming along. Somebody that you wanted to see step into a role, take control of it. Now, once you get to the regular season, we know that you've not played against the best interior D linemen. Some of those guys may be out. And the interior D lineman is a hit or miss position in the NFL. We know that the Cowboys last year had to trade for Hankins because they weren't filling that role. Now they drafted Mozzie Smith. The Cowboys were worried about him. So several teams don't necessarily have a massive interior D lineman because the edges get so popular, and you want to blitz linebackers and you want to fill other holes, that position doesn't always get filled. Sometimes you just get a space filler instead of someone who can really do damage. So he's going to have to play against those and grow. But as of right now, it appears that he is ready to be a week one starter for the Texans as a rookie, which is a huge step forward. Another guy who is going to look to be a week one starter. And I know you may want to start Case Keenum here. There is, I was very against it from the beginning to start Case Keenum over CJ Stroud. I don't think Davis Mills is the guy. He still doesn't look any good. But Case Keenum at least can come in and temper and not necessarily expose CJ Stroud and let him get a little bit more used to the speed of the game and not let him throw too many picks early on. Maybe you want that. History would tell you the second quarterback taken in the draft is not a sure thing very often. It is top 5 quarterback picks are 50-50 at best, a little bit worse than that. So to see what CJ Stroud can do, there was a positive you want to take out of what CJ Stroud did in the preseason game. His numbers weren't great. He wasn't able to lead consistent drives. His second drive was pretty good. His first drive, not great. Second drive is better. But here's what D'Amico Ryans had to take out of it and finding the positive for finding the positive for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, with the passes that CJ made, you see the accuracy, right? What you saw in college, you saw CJ just playing comfortable, and it was exciting to see him just playing loose, making the throws that we've all seen him make in practice. We've seen him make at Ohio State. So you saw him just being himself and being comfortable, and that's what he can do. Just have to continue to get more reps so he can continue to be even more comfortable when he's in those game-like situations. Nothing is more important than getting reps, right? Real, actual reps in games, and it was fun to see him just the game slow down a little bit and to see him make the plays that we've all seen him make.
So there is positives. You can see CJ Stroud has certain things that Davis Mills does not. And he has abilities that are there. And from week 1 to week 2, we saw him check down a little bit more. We saw him not necessarily try and make the hero play in week 2 as we saw him do in preseason week 1. But you're going to need him to find that middle ground. And that's just going to be a process with him that, depending on how he takes it, it's either going to be a long rookie season of a lot of checkdowns and a lot of people questioning if he's really got the arm to get it downfield and can he read the defense, or him throwing some picks and everybody questioning it that way. But there is some positives to take out of what CJ Stroud, his improvement in week 1 to week 2. We talked earlier about Mike McCarthy not playing his starters at all, and the Texans were planning joint practice week with the Saints. Don't really have to play our starters much in preseason week 3. Rest them up. You get a bye week in between, then you start the regular season. You can get your guys really ready, healthy, and feeling good week 1 because, once that season starts, the grind is pretty real with the injuries and recovery and everything else. Here's DeMeco Ryans, though, on the change of plans when you take away that joint practice. Will the starters play?
Right, that's a great question. That's with the changes in practice, right? For us, we initially had the joint practices scheduled, but now with us just being here going against each other, I think our plan with that will change. So we'll discuss that later in the week, and I'll have an update for you later.
So no updates yet. I'll give him credit. He knows that he's a bit over his head right now, having to cancel a joint practice, that he maybe needed to take a step back. But this is, we're going to play him in joint practices, so they get to see everybody. We'll get CJ Stroud. We'll get those reps against other team defenders. He'll get to see teams showing different looks to him. Can we give him that practice and then maybe sit him in week 3, play Davis Mills and Case Keenum a little bit, and get him ready on week 1. Give him a little bit more game plan and get him a little bit more ready. That plan doesn't seem like it's going to work as well if you then take away the joint practices. Maybe this now will be a point of, hey, let's show these rookies how we game plan in the NFL for our next opponents, and really game plan the Saints more as, instead of a preseason game, more of getting your reps in line for a regular season game. So we may see some more starters playing for the Texans this week. The Saints will probably not play a ton of starters, but I think we could see it from the Texans. And finally, one more interesting note he had. This one's a short one. DeMeco Ryans talking about the defensive play calling and where it stands going forward.
Yeah, well, we use the preseason in a way where Burke has called the plays throughout the preseason, and I've had my input as well, and it's been running fairly smoothly over the past 2 weeks.
So Matt Burke, the defensive coordinator, has been the play caller for defense, allowing DeMeco Ryans a little bit more freedom to become a head coach and learn all of the game management, being a part of offense and defense, really trying to take on the head coach role. I think that's important. Now, part of why you hired DeMeco Ryans is for his defense, but this is something that, as you have everyone taking the highest position they've ever had in the NFL, I don't necessarily want any of these coaches taking on too much. So if you have a defensive coordinator you can trust, you can game plan with him and let him be the play caller during the game to allow yourself a little bit more freedom, to allow yourself to have the override power and veto power on offense and defense. Because if you're defensive play calling, you're probably not going to be as focused on that offense. So it allows DeMeco Ryans to be a bigger overseer for the Texans. And in reality, the coaching staff this year for the Texans is as much of a learning experience as for a lot of these players. This is not going to be a great year in Houston Texans football history, I do not believe. But it could be a very, very important year for the future of Houston Texans football. Speaking of the future of Texas football, moving over to the Longhorns as we get into Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Join the conversation. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. 512-337-3776. So the AP preseason All-American poll came out today. Players got listed. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But something I was noticing about the Kool-Aid, and a lot of Texas fans are drinking the Kool-Aid, and I see a lot of other Texas fans that just can't buy the Kool-Aid this season, that do not buy into it. And a lot of them are just not fans of Sark. I get it. I understand that you want to see a winning coach, and Sark has not brought you the winning that you wanted in his first 2 seasons. I understand that he has not won some of the big games he needs to win. So I understand the trepidation of going against Sark. But to buy the Kool-Aid for the Texans has not always required you to be full in on the coach. as we're 12 days away from football or Texas football, people are talking more about Colt McCoy. Got me thinking about, well, what was the difference of a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, where people were really drinking the Kool-Aid with a much less talented team, player-wise, that there wasn't the star players and the athleticism and the ability of some of these players across the board. Why was it? And you said there's just one name, Sam Ehlinger. Sam Ehlinger was the reason people could buy into this team. And if you look at last year, even with Sark, what was the reason people could buy in and drink the Kool-Aid? Bijan Robinson. You had somebody that Texas fans truly believed in. They truly believed in one player. It's the same with Colt McCoy. It's the same with Vince Young. And now those teams had they had a bit more talent on them than some of the teams in recent history. But when you looked at recent years of what Texas fans, when they were drinking the Kool-Aid, the people they would go to, it wasn't necessarily the coaches. There was always that player. And Texas has a number of guys that could be that player. But I don't think any of them have earned it yet in Texas fans' eyes. Who's going to be the guy for Texas this year that when you're talking to an Aggie or when you're talking to a Red Raider, when you're talking to anybody else, a Bama fan, Ohio State fan, USC fan, when you're talking to them, who's the name that you're going to say? Who's the name that you go, no, we got this guy? Because we know Quinn Ewers hasn't earned that yet, not in Texas fans' eyes. Xavier Worthy was on that path, but he hasn't. But last year, he lost that. Texas fans don't feel that anymore about him. They don't have a running back right now that has proved it. They don't have the wide receiver. They don't have the quarterback. Maybe it's Jalen Ford. But when's the last time a defensive player was the guy? When's the last time that it was that where you said, no, that's the reason we're going to win these games? So I'm going to ask this big fat poll, and it plays into this. And I want your text for both. I want who's going to be the guy this year, but I also want which Longhorn is going to win the most awards this season. Because we see the AP preseason All-America team. Texans got 2 guys on the second team. We'll get into that. But I want to know who's the guy that you think that the national market will then say, oh, yeah, that's the guy. And you can use him in any argument you want. And everybody knows, no, that's the guy. Bijan Robinson last year, that's the guy. You could use him in any argument. And anybody would come tell you, you could say, oh, Texas can't do this and Texas can't do that. And you go, we'll hand the ball to Bijan. And they go, that Bijan's really good, huh? Who's that guy this year? Because we thought it was going to be Xavier Worthy. We thought it was him, but he didn't look as good last year. Is it back to Xavier? Is Jonathan Brooks going to come out and be that guy? Is he going to step up? Does Quinn Ewers find that role? Does Quinn Ewers finally step up? Or is it Jalen Ford? Is it Kelvin Banks? Is that who we're going to go and go? Kelvin Banks is going to win the most awards, and we're going to say, well, man, our offensive line it's just the anchor down by Kelvin Banks. We got the O-line. We got a D-line now. Who's it going to be that's going to make Texas fans once again feel the pride that they can tell some other team, no, so-and-so's got your number. He's coming to get you. Tell us on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776. Tell us where you think is which Longhorn is going to win the most awards, which Longhorn is going to be the guy to let all Longhorn fans really drink that Kool-Aid. Even if you're not a Sark guy, even if you're not a Sark girl, if you love the Texas Longhorns, who's that person that you're using in your arguments? Tell us. Specs text line, 512-337-3776. We come back. We'll talk about the crazy weekend in the AL West. And Ian Robbie talked about the Texas O-line versus Ghost Fronts. It's an interesting conversation from Rob Babers. He does X's and O's better than me, so I'm going to let him tell you yourself. We're going to come right back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back here on the Sports Complex on a Monday afternoon. Join the conversation, 512-337-3776. We're asking you, which Longhorn player is it going to be this year that's going to make that Kool-Aid go down a little bit easier? Who's going to win the awards this year? Who's going to be the one that we can use in arguments to tell our friends they're going down because of one Longhorn player? Tell me who that is, 512-337-3776. Theme of the week? It's waiting. It's waiting. We're 12 days away from Texas football, guys, and the waiting is killing me. It feels like we have been right on Texas football for like 4 or 5 weeks now, and I cannot keep waiting. But we also get college football starts this week, and high school football starts this week. We're getting to it, guys. We're getting back to football. I'm tired of preseason already. I'm done. It's difficult watching a preseason, and I turn it on I watch it every weekend. I'll be watching it tonight. But yeah, it's difficult to watch. So I'm ready for football that matters. It's coming this weekend, and then it'll be really here in 2 weekends. Oh man, in 3 weekends? In 3 weekends? It's going to be a blast. Cannot wait. There is baseball that matters, though. There is baseball that matters in the AL West. You're a Texans Rangers fan if you are a Houston Astros fan. It was not a great weekend for you in the AL West. Astros and Mariners play. The Astros basically do everything they can to not win a series over 3 games. They get swept. It means that the Mariners now, the Mariners were 3.5 games back today. They're now about a half game back from the Astros. They are now 3.5 back from 3 games back from the Rangers, who are 2.5 games ahead of the Astros, because the Rangers also got swept this weekend playing the Brewers. So in a weekend, the Mariners jumped to within 3 games of leading the AL West. The Mariners, a team that every season they have really annoying management, because if you're a Mariners fan, it's got to be annoying, and if you're another fan, it's got to be annoying. But it's basically the Mariners plan every offseason or every season when they get to the trade deadline is we're not going to pay really many of our players. They may play Julio Rodriguez because that guy is really, really good, and he is a big fan favorite. But we're not going to build a team around him. We're not going to sign a bunch of guys. We're not going to spend a ton of money. The Mariners aren't. The Mariners are going to bring in one guy, pair 1 or 2 big names. They just pay Felix Hernandez. They pay 1 or 2 guys. And then continue to trade off good young talent and talent that's about to get paid, trade them off at the trade deadline so they can get more picks, they get more young talent, and they continue to build it up. And every year, they are right there to play spoiler and have a shot and never make it to the big dance, never make it to the World Series because they're just not quite enough and not invested enough in a year. It's frustrating. It's frustrating if you're a Mariners fan. It's frustrating if you're in their division. But that happens every single year with the Mariners, and they are making a run right now, playing really, really good baseball, sweeping the Astros this weekend. And the Astros now have to, and the Mariners now will be taking on a White Sox team that's 3-7 in their last 10, so they can come in and sweep another series against the White Sox, get even closer, because the Astros have to go take on the Red Sox, who are a game and a half back from the Astros in the wild card. Just a game out of a wild card spot is the Red Sox. So they're waiting. They could come after the Astros even more this week. And on the mound tonight for the Astros, Christian Javier takes the mound. Christian Javier is 8-2 this season. And it would make you think 8-2? That's not, like, if you just look at that one number, you think that Christian Javier has been doing pretty good. Now, if you look at his ERA, it's 4.49 in his 23 starts. That's the other number. He has started 23 games. So that means 13 no decisions, 8 wins, 2 losses. And in the last 7 out of 9 starts, he's pitched 5 innings or less. So Christian Javier is having problems, and this is a kind of recurring trend. This is something that you hope that Justin Verlander coming back. We talked about it some on Ball Don't Lie for the last year about how Brett Strom, who was the pitching coach genius that helped the Astros build an amazing staff for many years, he moved on to the Diamondbacks, who are the Rangers are going to be playing starting tonight. But he moved on, and this staff took a hit. These young pitchers really took a hit, and Verlander helped steady the ship some. So we saw Verlander steady the ship. now I think something that we're starting to notice is it wasn't so big at the beginning of the year, but as starts and as you start to have more bad memories, the pitch clock is really starting to affect some of these young pitchers. Some of these young pitchers who like to have a little bit more time to forget giving up a home run. And some of these young pitchers who like to have a little bit more time to take a breath and calm down in between pitches when something's not going. And a guy like Christian Javier, who can be erratic at points, he liked to have a little bit more time for Maldonado to calm him down, for everybody to settle down and get back on track. And with the pitch clock, that's out the window. There is no settling down. So you have to learn and take breaths and get into your own rhythm, but you have to have a shorter and shorter memory than you used to be able to have to be a pitcher in MLB. And it feels like some of these Astros pitchers are getting so worked up because they're missing some pitches. They don't get a call. A guy gets a bloop hit on them, and it spirals, and it just spirals down to where they cannot catch their breath in some of these innings and are getting knocked out of games. And it's one of the not as talked about impacts of the pitch clock is young pitchers trying to forget the last pitch and move on in a very, very set amount of time, where normally a Maldonado could calm some of these pitchers down. They're not having that chance anymore this season, and it is coming to be a problem for Framber Valdez, who we know pitched a no-hitter because he never really got in trouble. He was getting the calls, his stuff was looking good, and he never really got into trouble, so he can pitch great the whole game. But when they start to get in trouble, some of these younger pitchers for the Astros go downhill pretty quick. JP France is not having that problem. But we know Urquidy has had it somewhat. We know that Framber has had it somewhat this season. We know that Luis Garcia, before he got hurt, had it a little bit. We know that Christian Javier has definitely had it this season. That when things start to go bad, they tend to pile up on this Astros pitching staff because I believe they just don't have the time to stop and relax. Now, I'm all for the pitch clock, but this is something that you need to, as an Astros organization, start to realize and work on. Okay, your rhythm in between pitches, we need to add in the breaths and the cleaning your mind and moving forward that you have in every single one. And even if you're clearing your mind of the last 3 good pitches, we need you to visualize something or do something to change what your focus is, because it seems to be affecting the next pitch too often for these Astros. And they're going into a big, big series with the Red Sox that is a game and a half behind them right now in that wild card chase. They're only 2.5 back from the Rangers, but the Mariners are creeping up on them. Now the Red Sox are right there. They could be out of the playoff picture by going into Friday. That's the reality for the Astros. They could be out of the playoffs by Friday. Now they can get back into it clearly, but they could be outside looking in by Friday if they do not start turning this around. Now Michael Brantley's doing rehab. He may be able to come back. Yanier Diaz is still pitching or still hitting well. We know that he caught again for Christian Javier last time, so Yanier Diaz may be behind the catcher. I haven't seen the lineup for tonight yet. There's some things that could be happening for this Astros team where this is starting to get a crucial time. So if we're talking about not having football to watch right now, Astros games and Rangers games. Rangers pregame starts at 8 o'clock right here tonight against the Arizona Diamondbacks, but they're looking a little bit easier. Arizona does have a winning record. They're about a game out of the wild card as well. They're in this, but they're running a bullpen game in game 1 against the Rangers. So not blowing pitching against the Rangers. I believe it is a short series. Diamondbacks may be kind of letting this one see how it goes. But yeah, they scratched their starter. They are now going with Joe Manapli. It's a bullpen game for the Diamondbacks tonight against the Rangers. That will be right here on the Horn at 8 p.m. tonight. Pre-game, 8 p.m., 8:40 game for the Rangers tonight. Ian Rod Babers, great X and O's guys, tactician, can really break down the plays. I always love it. I could try and do what he does, but I don't do it as well as him. He's one of the best. He was on Ian Rod this morning 6 to 11 a.m. right here on the Horn. And he talked about some looks that the O-line is going to be seeing this year. There's a young O-line for Texas, and it's a big piece of the success for Texas this season is that O-line. You can join the conversation, 512-337-3776. When I tell you which player is it that's going to win the most awards, we're asking the question, which player is going to win the most awards? Who's the Texas player that's going to make you drink the Kool-Aid? Kelvin Banks is one of those guys on that list. He's got to be. That's on that O-line. Here's Rob Abers from this morning talking about the O-line versus ghost fronts. Some other looks the O-line may be seeing and what they need to do for Texas Longhorns.
The offensive line is going to be big this year. If they lean early on the running game and they trust the running game, it'll be because they trust the offensive line to be able to, reset the line of scrimmage and open up holes for those young running backs, because those young running backs are unproven commodities. But your offensive line is a proven commodity. You just need to take the next step. And not only in run blocking, but also pass blocking. So I went and looked at the 19 sacks Texas gave up in 2022, 19 of them, that's not a lot.
That's not a huge number.
That's not a huge number. Here's the compelling thing, though, because I tried to look for trends, patterns. Like, well, is there something that is disproportionately more effective versus Texas offensive line than one concept or another? And I didn't really find anything until the Baylor game, the last game of the season. Dave Aranda.
That was the game where Quinn Ewers' head was spinning every time he dropped back.
Exactly. Dave Aranda figured out, so nobody else really. I think Dave Aranda just kind of looked at the sample size and what he had, what Texas was presented with and what they had to try to adjust to during the season. And I just think he came up with a masterful pressure package, or at least some concepts within the pressure package that worked well against the Texas O-line. And so they allowed, by the way, they allowed 5 sacks in that game, which was the most sacks they allowed in any game. So
5 of the 19. And
that's one game. So already, okay, well, they had a lot of success. What did they do? Well, what they did essentially was present what they call an amoeba front. They used to call them ghost fronts. You guys have seen this, where they line up 7, 8 guys all across the line of scrimmage. All right, some guys in a 2-point stance, some guys in a 3-point stance. And essentially, this helps them use what they call simulated pressure, which is 4 guys rushing, but you never know where the 4 guys are coming from, because you have that ghost front. They call it ghost front because the quarterback can see ghosts. And what he did was he would drop. You got 7 guys across the front, all lined up on the line of scrimmage. You're gonna drop 3. I'm gonna rush 4, but you have no idea
which 4.
And the offensive line, at times, it would confuse the blocking schemes because they would set the protection or slide the protection, and it would just be wrong. You know what I mean? And a free rusher would end up coming, or they would end up confused, and 2 O linemen would be devoted to 1. So what Dave Aranda showed, and I looked at the 5 sacks. In the 5 sacks, you had either those amoeba fronts I just discussed, those ghost fronts, and/or a simulated pressure on 4 of those 5 sacks. So that he was using the concept a lot, and I think if teams are picking up defensively where Dave Aranda left off, that's where they're going. Now, Washington didn't use it, curiously. Washington, I think, figured they didn't need it, because Washington actually is one of the top 10 best teams in the country at creating pressure, and they had their own type of pressure. So they actually were able to create organic pressure. Hell, at one time, Texas had an 8-man protection against a 4-man rush and allowed a sack against Washington. So
I remember that. I mean, you just watched the film this weekend, because that's how Rod spends his weekends, watching film at old games. But Hayden Conner, the left guard, really struged in that game. I remember him just looking, all right, where are they coming from? He was seeing ghosts in pass protection. Yeah,
so Washington, Texas had the 2 sacks they gave up versus Washington. They had 6 and 7.
I was talking about Conner in the Baylor game.
You're right. In the Baylor game, yes. So of course, and I think that was the whole purpose of it. Right? You wanted to confuse those offensive linemen, and whatever pass protection they set, it wouldn't always be wrong. But there's a good chance that one of the 4 rushers that were coming in their simulated pressure would be a free rusher. Who's responsible for the free rusher? Quarterback. The quarterback's responsible for the free rusher, so you're putting a little bit more responsibility and burden on the young quarterback too. And think about this, guys. What did Quinn Ewers talk about is more satisfying than throwing a touchdown pass this year? What did he say?
Getting your check right.
Getting the pass protection right. He said getting the right pass protection. Oh, it's just as satisfying as throwing a touchdown pass. Yeah, because he experienced that Baylor game last year, and he's like, damn, touchdown pass don't mean a damn thing if I don't get the pass protection right up front. So that is a young, maturing quarterback. He's growing. He's evolving. He knows, all right, you know what? First things first. Guys, we get the pass protection right before I start thinking about Xavier Worthy and that one-on-one he's got with that really nice route combination of the post corner. Get the pass protection right. And I think the Baylor game is a direct direct reflection of why they want to emphasize that. Now, actually, the Baylor game isn't as troubling to me as the Washington game, considering you had 7 8-man protections and you were still giving up sacks versus 4-man rushes. That is a big
O-line
issue.
did not have a good game against Washington.
They did not run blocking
It looked
or
like
pass
they
blocking.
enjoyed the holidays.
Yes, and that's so. My point is, we need the offensive line to take a leap this year, pass
No
blocking
question.
and run blocking. And I can tell you right now, they're gonna see if Nick Saban and was it Kevin Steele's new DC, you're gonna see them amoeba and them ghost fronts, and you're gonna see lots of simulated pressures. I can guarantee it. As a matter of fact, now that is on my list of ways to defend Texas offense. You got to throw that simulated pressures and ghost fronts out there a ton, and I think you're going to see it more.
Confuse Quinn Ewers and make him. Well, the idea of that, to me, Rod, and we'll get to the timeout and pick this up. Also get into some of the Longhorns trying to make NFL teams. Bijan Robinson's first action in Atlanta. Roshan Johnson. Colt McCoy got the start for the Arizona Cardinals. Shane Buechele continuing to shine in Kansas City.
He looks good, don't he?
All that coming on. He looks really good. It might be the backup to Patrick Mahomes if he continues to play like he is.
That's
but
wild.
Wanted to mention, so for our audience, if you're breaking it down behind the curtain of how this works with the defense, if they're all standing up and some of them are standing, shouldn't you have an advantage in power run if you're just going to run the ball, or do they do that in passing situations only?
They did mostly. It was some run situations.
I would think you should have the advantage running the ball if you got dudes that are just standing up.
Yeah, you're right. There were
leverage game.
2 first. You're right. There were multiple first downs where they also were able to get.
But that also is
Sark is passing on first down.
That is also Quinn Ewers getting a check right now. Look, he can look to the sidelines and look at the big board but you can check to a run in that spot. And if the offensive line is more of a power running line this year, that should be an opportunity to attack an amoeba defense with your own run game.
That's a great point. To start trust. Last year, you might not have trusted this young quarterback to make that audible to check. This year, you have to, especially if you want to show NFL coaches that this guy is ready for the next level. And what do you always say? If Quinn's not declaring for the draft, next NFL draft, then something
might be transferring.
Yes, something might have gone wrong. Everything didn't go as planned. And I'm with you on that. That's a great point. I don't think he did that last season. I don't believe I observed a lot of that last season.
Of checking out of a play or trusting him to check out of the play. That's got to be the next step, because something tells me he'll trust that guy Manning to check out of a play when it's time, right? I mean, and understand the concept and get it called right, because you got to call that at the line of scrimmage, and the linemen have to hear, okay, that's when they're calling out.
Exactly.
You used to hear Peyton Manning.
Who's the mic? This guy declaring. Strong side.
You're helping your offensive line not look like they don't know what they're doing. That's the quarterback's job. We heard, if you're watching Hard Knocks, you've heard Aaron Rodgers talking to Zach Wilson, the backup quarterback there, about, hey, no look passes are nice, but get the check right.
Set the protection right.
And you'll be in a much better place.
Yep.
Your offensive line will appreciate it. You'll appreciate it because you won't get ear-holed.
And I think that's why he's like, it's just as satisfying as throwing a touchdown pass, because he had some trauma from that Baylor game and the way they approach their pressure packages. I think Texas will be able to solve it and remedy it. It's not anything that football teams aren't doing at every level of football, but they definitely struggled with that concept.
There's Rob Babers from Ian Rob B this morning talking about the ghost fronts against Texas and how people can start to attack this Texas O-line. One of the things that Texas is going to have to step up going into this season, and one of those points of when I say which Texas Longhorn will be the guy this season, win the most awards, and give you faith in this Texas team, tell us on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776, 512-337-3776. We come back, we'll read off some of those texts and get us into the next hour right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on the sports complex, playing some songs about waiting. Waiting on a Friend by the Rolling Stones there. Playing some songs about waiting because we're waiting for Texas football to come back in 12 days. I'm waiting for regular football that starts this weekend. I can't wait for this weekend. Let's read your text. The Specs text line 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line where you can get a hold of us. We're talking about Texas. Which Texas player is going to be the guy this year? Let's read some of these texts. The feeling is not one guy this year. It's the whole team, not just one individual. I get that that's a great in-camp motto. When we get to the season, it can be 3 the guys. I'm fine if Jonathan Brooks wants to step up and Quinn Ewers wants to step up and Xavier Worthy wants to step up and Jalen Ford wants to step up and Jalen Catalon wants to step up. I'm fine with that. Does not bother me one bit. But I need some guys to stand out from the pack because if everyone's just in there, then it's going to be a long season because you need to know who you're going to in those big moments. See, we got a we rise or fall with Quinn. I agree. I just don't think the Texas fans have the faith in him right now. But I agree with you. If Quinn Ewers isn't there, then you're going to Malik Murphy. And if Malik Murphy's not there, then you're going to Arch and you're pushing everything 2-3 years down the line and Sark's hitting the emergency button. And what game of the season are you doing that? So I agree. Rise and fall with Quinn. I would love to see it be a defensive guy. If the other team can't score, they can't beat us. But you're right. Horns fans are waiting to see who's that going to be. Everyone hope it's Quinn Ewers. I mean, quarterbacks are the easiest. There has been. Bijan Robinson was one. Ricky Williams is definitely one that you could say made everyone believe as a Texas fan. So it could be a running back. Wide receiver, Roy Williams is really good, but I don't know if he was that guy. But Xavier Worthy is a guy that Xavier Worthy is a second-team preseason All-American, so I don't understand why you think he's inconsequential in terms of being a reliable guy. I don't think he's inconsequential. I think last season, a lot of Texas fans I talk to, I hear on the station that text in, don't trust him to be reliable. I do. I think he'll be better. We know that Sark said he had the broken hand last year. He should be back. But I get why Texas fans are not using Xavier Worthy as the example of, don't worry, Xavier Worthy's going to beat you, because they're a little bit worried about Quinn, and they're worried about Xavier Worthy and getting thrown to 50 times a game when you need to spread the ball around. We get Jordan Whittington. Look, I love Jordan Whittington. I think he's a great Texas fan. He's awesome. We'll play some Sark audio about him in a little bit, but he's not going to give anybody go, oh, we have Jordan Whittington. We're going to give him 4 targets a game. I love Jordan Whittington. He should get more targets. We'll play a clip about mid-range passing. Jordan Whittington should be part of this offense. I don't know if he's going to be. And JT Sanders is a convincing name because in my eyes, he could be the number 2 tight end in the country this year. So we'll see where there. We got to take a break. When we come back, I'll read some more of these texts. Keep texting in 512-337-3776, and we will get into some Sark audio from today, talking about the second scrimmage of the season, what they got going forward, and we're going to dive into the offensive side of it today. Tomorrow will be defense, but we'll get into that when we come back. The second hour of the Sports Complex right here on the Horn, 101.9 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on the Horn. Going to get into some Sark audio from his press conference today, media availability today. We will get into E and Robbie talking about the Cowboys in the NFL. Last calls will coming up a little bit later. More of your text messages, 512-337-3776. We are asking you, which Longhorn player is going to be the guy? Pretty much that's that simple. Which Longhorn player is going to be the guy this season? The one that Bijan Robinson was a year ago. Sam Ehlinger, Ricky Williams, Colt McCoy, Vince Young, the guy that makes you say, I don't care. This is who we're going to in the fourth quarter. We're about to win this game. When you're talking to Aggies, you're talking to Red Raiders, when you're talking to Sooners, and I know you don't want to talk to them, but when you are, who are you going to say is the guy that we go to? And the text said, Quinn Ewers is the guy it's supposed to be. That's who we want it to be. Xavier Worthy, second team all preseason, AP all preseason team. He's there. All-American. He should be a guy that's there. Is Brooks going to be able to step up into that role? Is it going to be on the defense? Is it Jalen Ford? Jalen Catalon getting a lot of preseason talk. Is it going to be someone on the end? Does Alfred Collins finally step in? Is it JT Sanders? Send us in the text, 512-337-3776. We do have a couple more for Sanders. I like this one. I'll take anyone but the punter. If he's our most impactful player, it's going to be a long season. I think we're past that. I think we are past those years at the Longhorns, but never say never. You got to stay healthy. You got to stay ready to go. But I think there's some depth now at Texas, so it shouldn't be that bad. But it seems as if when I'm talking to fans and I'm talking to some friends of mine and we're talking about the Longhorns, there's certain people that are just not fans of Sark. They haven't seen him show that he can do it, and I get it. Look, we can all talk for days and days about the playing in the third and fourth quarter, or the play calling in the third and fourth quarter, the play in the third and fourth quarter. We can talk about it for days about how last season, the year before, it sucked at points. It just flat out sucked at points. And you don't feel comfortable with any lead at Texas. That's a problem. We know that's there. But that was there last year. And people still were drinking Kool-Aid last year. And the team is better than it was last year, except for there's not that guy. And there's not the run game because of Bijan and Roschon. But Bijan Robinson made people say, oh, man, if it's fourth, I feel on fourth down, we can give it to Bijan. If we can give it that, we can give it to Bijan. And before that, I said, why were people were sold Sam Ehlinger? You believe Sam Ehlinger could take over a game. That was those years. And Texas normally has that guy. In years that people are drinking the Kool-Aid, they have somebody that they feel can be that guy. And they haven't had it. They don't have it this season. And they do. I think they do have it on this team. I don't think that there's a guy that has proven it to Texas fans enough. Xavier Worthy did it his freshman season. He did not do it his sophomore season. But that was due to other issues. I know that they wanted to have Isaiah Neyor be the deep threat and Xavier Worthy do other things. That didn't happen. But maybe this is Xavier Worthy's here. Maybe he comes out and he puts in there. But this is the question. And so the question is, who's going to win the most awards? Because whoever's on the most award watch list, whoever's at the finalists for the most awards, that's probably going to be the guy. That's probably going to be the guy that everybody says. So if it is a defender, if it's Jalen Ford is going to be on all these lists, or if it's going to be Jalen Catalon for the defense, if it's going to be someone else on this defense that steps up, then maybe it'll be them. Maybe that'll be the one. But I think we just got to take it. It's an open field. Exactly. It's an open field right now, so tell us, text on 512-337-3776 if you got someone off the wall. If you think there's somebody else who may step up, is it A.D. Mitchell? Does he come in and just blow everybody out of the water? Does C.J. Baxter take a step up at that running back spot and take the role and say, no, I'm a rookie, but I'm going to be the next running back at Texas? We don't know. Sark talked to me today. There was a second scrimmage this Saturday. Things went through. We're going to start with the offense. So there is some positives on the offense. There's not some positives, but let's start off with him just detailing now that they are the end of what he calls the end of camp, but now that school has started, where they are with the program getting ready for the start of the season against Rice in 12 days. Here's Coach Sarkisian.
At the end of the day, for us to kind of that being the end of training camp in our mind, with school starting today. Now it's about creating really good habits, right? We talk a lot about in our team room about kind of the 3 phases of their life that they operate in, right? They've got their academic world, they've got their football world, and then they've got their personal and their social world. And managing those 3 worlds simultaneously, I think, is really important. And you do that through really good self-discipline. And you do that through creating habits that ultimately start to become the routines of how we operate on a weekly basis from Sunday through Saturday, and then recreating it again the next week. So a little bit of a different shift in focus. I will say for us, big picture wise, this week is really about details, right? We've got a lot of stuff in all 3 phases, and now we got to really start to tighten the screws on the details of how we want to operate. And so this will be a big week for that. And then obviously getting into Saturday, having the mock game where they can really get a feel and a sense of the routine from a pregame standpoint, and then we'll probably have about 50 or so situations that we'll work on Saturday, various things that come up in game that you got to be ready for from the sidelines, substitutions and different things. So a lot still to be done, a lot of work still to be done on that.
So Sark basically setting up there, school is back in session. It is time to change focus on some of our goals and some of our messaging that we need to change into to make sure everybody is now used to football not being 100% of your life. You now have to transition back into school. For a lot of these freshmen, for the guys that an Anthony Barr, for a Jonte Cook, for CJ Baxter, for Peyton Kirk, guys that are freshmen on this team that could see playing time, you have to now say, this is your start of college. We need to get you guys more ready to understand the workload of a regular class workload that you're doing and playing and to practice and everything. So you're ready, and we need you to do that in the next week. Because once we get to next week, we're really starting to go, and we're full force. So there is a lot of that going on this week where it's not 100% football, but you can't overload some of these players as they get started going into school as well. So that's what you say. It's kind of the end of training camp, and you're into regular season, which now makes you a student athlete again, as opposed to basically just an athlete was what you were during the off-season or during summer. Sark also talks about setting the depth chart. He had talked about week 2 was where you'd start to see those position battles start to get a little bit clearer. And he talked about when he was setting the depth chart and where they're at, getting an actual depth chart ready before week 1.
By Saturday, because to be fair to them, they need to know who's the first unit, who's the second unit, who's the backup in all 3 phases, so that if a guy goes down, if a guy's shoe comes off, if a guy's helmet pops off, that next guy needs to know, who's going in. And so to be fair to them, we need to continue to compete. We need to continue to find the right combination of people. And the second part is, 12 days from now, we're playing at 2:30. And so to think, the same 22 guys are going to play every snap, probably not realistic, And so we got to find the right combinations of whether it's a safety rotation or corners or linebackers or receivers, runners, to make sure that we're getting a nice blend of rotating those players so that we're really strong for 4 quarters.
So saying that hopefully by the end of this week, we may start to see a depth chart. I doubt he will release anything to the media, to us as fans. I doubt he's going to release anything by the end of the week, but we will see it in 1 week from today. Going into Rice is when we'll see our first real depth chart and our real 2 deep and all of that coming out. But what it seems like is he's basically saying, I'm going to tell everybody what the depth chart is. We are going to go into it into the next scrimmage with the depth chart, setting up our 1s and 2s and getting you guys into the right personnel groups. And we will make sure that you're there, but I'm not going to tell anybody else what it is until after that scrimmage, because we may have to move some of those around. And I don't want to tell anybody they lost their position in that scrimmage, but some of the players may do it. So we will not see. He did not say anybody yet, but we are getting closer to that. He did when it was asked about the certain position battles of linebacker, running back, defensive back, position battles that we all know are existing, to see if there's going to be a set depth chart. Here's where he's at so far with those positions.
I'm not ready to do that yet for those guys. I feel, like I said, I felt very comfortable. We played Saturday, the first kind of portion of that scrimmage, 1 versus 2s, 2s versus 1s. It's kind of hard to tell the difference. Sometimes, those guys are such a good rotation right now. I think that we've got a great rotation at safety. I think we got a really good rotation at corner going, really at the linebacker spot as well, and on the D-line. I think receiver-wise, there's probably a little bit of a gap between those first 3 wideouts and the other guys, and that's understandable. Those guys have played a lot of football. But again, different position groups are different to where I got to see what this looks like for a few more days before we really nail it down.
Yeah, got to see it for a few more days. I think he knows. I think Sark could tell you right now exactly who's going to, in his mind, be a starter, but he wants that extra practice from everybody fighting for it, especially probably in 1 or 2 of those. And if he says, well, I know what it's going to be on D-line, I know what's going to be at cornerback, but I don't know what it's going to be at wide receiver, who the 3rd wide receiver is. And what's funny is he says top 3, and I know Isaiah Neyor is coming off an injury, but I would have figured it would have been closer to top 4. Isaiah Neyor should have been in that because if it's Jay Witt and Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, who we all hear are standouts, and then Isaiah Neyor, you would hope be in that, right? As a deep threat, you would hope he'd be there. And I know, but then you get to the rookies who he says good things about as well. Let's get into the offense, though. Because I'll let him explain it, but this is reports coming out of the practice where that Sark was not extremely pleased about the offensive play. The defense looked good. The defense did their job. We'll talk about defense tomorrow. But here's Sark on the offense in the scrimmage that happened this Saturday.
I thought offensively, there's some good things. There's some things that we didn't do well. And I think that all boils back down to consistency, right? We weren't consistent enough offensively Saturday the way that I would have liked it. And so, and it wasn't like one guy or one position group. I think everybody kind of took turns. So we definitely have to improve upon that. We got too many drops. We had such a good camp up until that point of really catching the ball well and making plays, and the ball just found the ground Saturday. So we definitely have to clean that up. I was impressed with their 3rd down wins. I thought the offense stayed on the field and extended drives with their ability to execute on 3rd down, which has been a big point of emphasis of ours. We were not very good a year ago on 3rd down, so to see them do that was good. It was great to have Xavier back. Really explosive day. Made a lot of big plays, big catches for us. Gunnar Helm has been as steady as ever. He's playing good football for us, just a guy to note. And our 3 young wideouts, they all didn't have the perfect day, but they've come a long way. When you talk about Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore, and Ryan Niblett, really impressed with those guys from where they're coming. From the quarterback standpoint, I really think their command has really improved, at their varying stages. I think Quinn, being a second-year starter, he's definitely in command of that first unit, and you feel good about that. I think that Arch and Malik both have grown in their roles and what they're doing in their command of the offense and taking charge. Obviously, we got to keep pushing consistency at that position, whether it's fundamentals, whether it's progression, whether it's pocket presence, whether it's tempo, whatever that looks like. But there's a level of consistency at that position that I think ultimately drives the unit. And so we got to keep working on that, which that's why we coach, But
so that's his look at the offense at the scrimmage, which was him saying nicely, and from what reports we heard, that the offense kind of screwed up a bunch of stuff. That throughout it, that they didn't make great reads, that they had pre-snap penalties, they were not getting set in the right place. And what we've talked about on the show before, about focus, and about the focus of energy to making sure, and it is, again, it's a Saturday before the school's starting back up. They're trying to get everything set in the regular life. It's hard to go into practice and do your second scrimmage. You got another scrimmage after that, and you just want it to be regular season. We're playing songs about waiting because you know what? It is. It's just tough at a certain point of training camp, a certain point of spring football where you just start to get so spring and fall football where you start to get more, and summer football where you start to get more and more annoyed at just taking the hits and doing the same plays over and over again, driving them in your head. But this is the point. This is where, hey, man, this is 3rd and 4th quarter. This is the things that you've screwed up. This is where you think, I'm up 21 points. I don't have to focus. And you pick up a penalty on 3rd and 5 that makes it 3rd and 10. And then on a longer pass down the field, because now you have to change the play call. And now he throws a pick. And now the defense has field position. They put up a quick 7, and now you don't know. I get it. It's hard to do. But this is an important part of drilling it into the head of the focus. It becomes difficult. I get it. You may not want to do it, but you have to get into it. So we are now going into the part of the year where this offense luckily gets to get yelled at a whole bunch. This offense gets to get yelled at a ton to get a reset on their offensive mindset, get back into focus. And although the things were not going the ways they wanted to go, they are now being able to change the mindset. Now, one of the things that he had talked about in previous at the first scrimmage was that the energy in the second half wasn't as good as what he wanted it to be. If you're not playing well and you're getting pre-snap penalties, and if you're getting, you're not covering the right hole, and he just open up a kind of, the offensive line doesn't read a blitz or doesn't read a protection right, and they just split open the B gap, and Jonathan Baxter kind of just runs, or C.J. Baxter, Jonathan Brooks just kind of runs, and a linebacker takes their head off because no one was paying attention, and he just went, we know what defense this is, we know what Texas, this is what we're gonna do. Those types of plays. But the energy was something that we talked about. Can they focus? If that's what's happening in the first half of the scrimmage, you're getting lit up at halftime, and that energy is going to come out a little bit better. Here's Sark when he was asked about what the energy was like in the second half of scrimmage versus week 1.
I thought it maintained well. I thought the defense, the first portion of the scrimmage kind of got the better of the offense. I thought the offense had a really nice 2-minute drill at the end of the first half. And then the offense came out in the third quarter and had a really good 3rd down, 4th down portion. And then the defense finished really well in our red zone lockout challenge. So much better energy, and we ran more plays. I think last week we ran just about 130. This week we just offense and defense, we were I think in the 150s. And so we ran more plays. We tried to get it more game-like than we had it the week before. We had a little longer halftime than we had the week before to really give them a sense and a feel of what it would feel like. And I thought, not only the players, I thought the coaches did a really good job at halftime of making sure our energy was right when we came back out.
So the energy, he says again, the energy is good, but this is what happens. The energy is going to be good because if you suck in the first half and your coaches are laying into you and you have a little bit longer halftime, I think that means we wanted to yell at them a little bit more. We really wanted to lay into them because there are reports where they were not doing well. And if you're Sark, if that's what Sark is a offensive guy, and that's why he's hired and that's what they want, he can say all day long he wants his defense to look good. But it's going to piss him off if this offense does not outplay his defense. It's going to. So there's some things that Texas offense is going to have to work on. You want to see them improve in the third scrimmage. I think we will see some of those things improve. We won't see them, but we'll hear reports that they have improved in the third scrimmage before we get to Rice, because it is. You just sometimes got to get it out of your system. Sark also did talk about Quinn Ewers. And how Quinn Ewers now talking about getting his pass protections right and being able to read defenses better and just being so much more comfortable in this offense, what Quinn Ewers has talked about, how that's helping the offense as a whole grow. Here's Sark talking about Quinn Ewers' growth.
Yeah, I think it's calming, right? There's much less anxiousness or anxiety amongst not just Quinn, but I think everybody, right? I mean, the quarterback permeates his feeling, right? And so when the quarterback permeates belief and confidence, I think that instills that not only in the other offensive players, but really the entire organization, right? I mean, that's why the position is what it is. And so I think Quinn definitely has a lot of confidence right now. He feels very comfortable with what we're doing. He's executing at a high level, but there's little things that we keep working with him on. And I think he appreciates that. I think he appreciates being coached. Because we're, ultimately, like every player, we're trying to make him the best that we can.
Yeah, he does need to still like being coached because he hasn't still shown that. And he looked better in the Washington game. It looked like he started to find things. And we all know, what do we want to see? We want to see footwork. We want to see much better footwork. We want to see some more basics out of Quinn Ewers this season. But I think there is points of as being a leader for this team, as being somebody that can help out the other players, help out the wide receivers, get in the right spots, I think Quinn Ewers is taking a big step there. Now, this is one of the biggest clips of the day that we will play about Sark. Because Sark was asked, well, if that deep ball's there and you have an A.D. Mitchell deep threat, you have Xavier or Jonte Cook or whoever else who can get downfield, and you're seeing that deep threat is there, does that open up mid-range passing for you? And will you be open to throwing the more mid-range passes this season? Here's Sark.
Yeah, no, I think that one thing that we're seeing is, to your point, AD, Isaiah, Jonte, these guys are really good deep ball players. They have the ability to track the ball and go make contested catches. And when it's one-on-one, that's an advantage for those guys. And so now all of a sudden, when you got to pull a safety out of the top to go do that, that creates opportunities for Xavier to not always have to do that to create explosive plays. A lot of times he can do this. And when he can catch and run and get out the back door, like I think about his freshman year, he catches an in cut against Texas Tech, and he makes one guy miss a tackle, and then he can go score from a distance. And so it still ends up being a 60-something yard touchdown pass, but we only had to throw the ball 15 or so yards, and so that's helpful. But it also does, it helped him. He caught 2 deep balls Saturday because, again, all the attention can't just be on him, and you have to worry about other people on the field now. And so when he does get those one-on-ones, I think that rapport with he and Quinn is important, and it was really nice to see Saturday that we're able to hit a couple balls down the field to him to where we can take advantage of that as well.
Not surprising, Sark took a question about mid-range passing and ended up in deep balls. But that was standing. The mid-range passing game for Texas this year, to be able to get yourself not stuck in longs, first and longs, second and longs, third and longs. Sorry, not first and longs. Second and long, third and longs, fourth and longs. When you have a running back core that you're not 100% sure of, you're not 100% sure who's the guy and who's going to be at that level. We hope Jonathan Brooks comes out and takes the job. But we're not 100% sure. You are sure that you have Xavier Worthy, who last season had to go deep so much that it hurt him. And he's a really good catcher, and he can get a lot of space against guys in that mid-range game. If you've seen some of the routes and some of the goal line routes and stuff he would run last year, that was the stuff he could do at mid-range where he's wide open. And I get goal line's different because it's not safety, but you can still get space off a defender in that same concept of breaking off, getting there, and that's 20 yards. And it's that type of play calling for Sark is going to be vital, especially in the third and fourth quarter. But getting these guys to get to Jordan Whittington, to get him those passes in the middle, and he runs like a running back. So if you're able to get him a ball 10 yards downfield, 8 yards downfield, and Jordan Whittington can run like a running back with the ball, but break a route like a wide receiver, that gives you way more options and gets you in much better situations. That mid-range passing game to get the ball out quick, to change up what defenses see when they're guarding you, to give Quinn Ewers some more confidence in his passing that, hey, that's 4 passes in a row that you completed now. Instead of keep chunking it down the field, that mid-range passing game is so vital to opening up the run game, opening up the deep passing game, all the things that Sark wants to do. You have to have this. You can't put together what you're trying to do without this piece. And I know you keep wanting to do the other things to allow this to exist, but at some point the mid-range passing game has to exist, or else those third and fourth quarters become harder and harder, because it's all based on that running back has to pick up. The running back has to average 4 to 5 yards a carry, and your deep balls have to connect at about a 50 to 60% rate. And those things are not always going to happen against good teams. They're not going to happen very often. So in the third and fourth quarter, if you say, well, now we can take it in and through 70% passing percentage, 70% completion rate over the middle for 8 yards. Now all we need is 2 yards rushing. That's all we need. That's a huge, huge difference. And it's something that Sark kept getting away from last year. He kept wanting to go for the deep ball. He kept wanting to, and then you run Bijan, and Bijan and Roschon are great, but you just keep throwing the ball down the field. That mid-range passing game, using Xavier Worthy in that mid-range passing game, will be very, very big. We're going to take a break. We come back. I got a couple more pieces of Sark audio to get to you. We got Ian Robbie talking about the Longhorns in the NFL. And then we'll get to the last call. We'll read some more of your text. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. Join the conversation there. 512-337-3776. We'll be right back on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on the sports complex here on the Horn, playing songs about waiting this week. Just waiting. It's waiting for football to start. There's 12 days to Texas, but this weekend, we get some real football that matters. We get to see USC start. If you have the Pac-12 network, you get to see USC start. What a terrible TV deal they have. But we're going to see that. There's some Guns N' Roses patience for you, because we need the patience to get through this week. And then we get some football that matters this weekend. I'm very excited for it. Continuing on with some more Sark Sound. If you want to join the conversation, 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. Let's continue on with a little bit more Sark Sound. I got a couple more pieces that I want to play for you. Sark was asked about having depth now and having a little bit more options in different personnel groups. If he felt a little bit more confident in the different groups and being able to throw out things, if you're able to play, empty backfield. We know Rob Babers loves some empty backfield. If you're able to play an extra lineman, all the different things you can do with those personnel groups because of the added depth you start to have now with this roster. Here's Sark talking about his confidence in the different personnel groups.
Definitely. We are very comfortable right now changing personnel groupings and having a lot of confidence in the guys that are on the field. The fact that we can go from 12 to 11 to 20 to 21, 10 for that matter. We can go to some big packages, using an extra lineman and different things. So that's part of our makeup. Historically, that's who we've been, and I feel like that. I've said this a lot. The more things we can do really well, the tougher we should be to defend. And so our job as coaches is, how do we build this menu out to where you're getting ready to game plan against us? Okay, you're not really sure what you might get the emphasis on this week, and so you have to practice all those things too. And if we feel like there could be a weak link somewhere, then we can attack you out of a different personnel or formation, so on and so forth. And so to have that versatility right now is really encouraging. And like I said, I'm not even talking about JT, but that combination, those two guys have been really good. The receivers are good players, and we've got an array of runners that do a lot of different things well, which part of it sometimes is difficult because you're calling certain stuff when certain guys are out there. But it kind of brings me a little bit back to being in the NFL, where you've got really specific guys that you're trying to highlight in a certain way, and they know what their strengths are and what we're going to ask them to do, and they do it with real conviction because they're confident in what they're doing.
So there you go. This is with Sark, the personnel groups. One of the things I'm taking away from this is something that he's kind of hinted at a lot with the running back room. And something that I'd like to see Jonathan Brooks disprove is that Sark doesn't feel he has a running back that can do enough different things for him. That he is basically going to stick out different personnel packages because he would rather use some of these wide receivers. And I know Sark would rather use the wide receivers and the quarterback's arm more anyway. But to say, well, I'm going to have more quarterback, because I can put out Keelan Robinson, and Keelan Robinson can jump out and catch passes, and then maybe I'll run some more empty set with no running backs, or maybe have a running back, and if it's Keelan or maybe even a Savion Red could step into this role once he gets healthy, someone that lines up in the backfield, and then we switch into an empty set. But other positions where I can put out more wide receivers on the field, where I feel I like these wide receivers more. And I want Jonathan Brooks to step up and be that guy to not allow Sark to not play him. We saw it in the bowl game. When he didn't have Bijan and Roschon, he did not feel the need to run the ball the way he needed to run the ball to win these games. So you have to force it. And that was with Bijan and Roschon. We saw multiple times last year with Bijan and Roschon that he didn't want to run the ball, that he chose to do something other than run the ball with Bijan Roschon on the bench. So I need Jonathan Brooks to step in there and be a factor enough to make Sark run the ball, to bring the balance to this offense. He wants to be a pass-heavy offense. I get it. He's going to be okay with it. He does it really well. But once you get in that third and fourth quarter, once you have not built up the goodwill with the O-line and beating on this D-line with run blocking, because you're not just running up the middle, because you're still pass blocking even when you're getting the ball to your running backs. You're not ever beating on this D-line. The D-line doesn't get beat down enough in this game because pass blocking, it's really harder. It's much harder to beat a defensive lineman than run blocking, where you can get some more pancakes, and it's a little bit easier to push forward because you're not going to get too many yards downfield. All of those things. It's easier for an O-lineman to kind of beat on a D-lineman and a running back to beat on a D-lineman if you keep running the ball. And it feels like Sark wants to throw the ball to running backs more than he wants to run the ball to running backs. However, that means the O-line has to play a different style, and it doesn't necessarily set up well for the third and fourth quarter, because if you've been pass blocking the entire first half and that D-line has been rushing, and, maybe they're chippy because they feel like they're getting held, but they're not getting beat up. You have to bring balance and quick passing, where an offensive lineman can get a hit in on a guy and not worry about getting too far downfield before the ball comes out. Run blocking, so he can get downfield. Those types of things to just set up to get yourself ready for that fourth quarter when you're going to need to run the ball. And when you're trying to run the ball, but your offensive linemen have been stepping back the entire game, and now in the fourth quarter you want them to lunge forward and get you that extra 2 or 3 yards, you have to set these things up in the first half. And I don't feel if Jonathan Brooks doesn't go out there and demand the ball with his play, with his attitude, with his leadership, it's going to be harder for this Texas team to convince Sark to run the ball enough, because we know he doesn't want to. So I want to see Jonathan Brooks be that guy. I want to see him against Rice put up 200 yards. I know he's not going to play enough to do that, but man, would you love to see that? Him get another big run like he had that 70-yard run. Show Sark he has some explosive ability. Show Sark he can pass pro. Show Sark he can do that and earn that spot and come up against Alabama and really solidify it. Because if he's able to run the ball, it changes the way the play calling can go, because now you have a running back you can trust and you can leave him in the game. When you want to go fast, you can leave him in the game as opposed to switching out these personnel groups. It's great to have more depth in personnel groups, but you got to be able to run the ball. And then the easiest layup question in the history of mankind. I just wanted to play it for you. I love my man Chip Brown, but this is the easiest layup question he's ever given to Sark. Who is the best blocking wide receiver for Longhorns?
Jay Witt's, I'd argue he's the best in our conference. I think he's phenomenal. He's got great strength. He's got a really high football IQ. He kind of understands where the ball's going to end up. And so he does a good job of gaining leverage on defenders. And he's savvy. I think good blockers are savvy, right? They know when to engage. They know when to get their hands and when to get a little bit of a tug, but not make it look like a hold. So he's probably the best one.
Yeah, that's the easiest layup question. Who is the best blocking wide receiver at Texas? If someone's better than Jay Witt, I'd love to know too. But that seems like the easiest lob. And I just want to give Jay Witt some love, because his blocking as a wide receiver is he's one of those guys, if you're a football freak, like many of you probably are, and just a sports fan like I am, that loves to watch guys do something special, watching him pass, like run block for passing, and just what he does as a wide receiver blocking wise, it's so good. It's so much fun to watch. And watching him just DBs having no clue what's about to come hit him is so much fun to watch. So just shout out to Jay Witt there, because we were talking about which Longhorn is going to be the guy, and someone brought up Jay Witt and saying he's a guy that Texas fans get around. And I think he is. I think you're right that Jay Witt is a guy that is one of the fan favorites that people really want, but Sark just doesn't throw him the ball enough. So he can do all those things that if you really want to watch the game and you're watching off ball and you're watching what's happening with the blockers, man, Jay Witt's fun. But I don't know if he's the guy that people are going to tune into. We know he's not on all the award watch list. They put out the AP preseason All-Americans today. There was no Longhorns on the first team. There was one Big 12 player on the first team, Cooper Beebe, the guard from Kansas State. That's your one player on the first team. Xavier Worthy gets on that second team, and Kelvin Banks gets on that second team. Solid pick. Kelvin Banks is very good. I'm glad to see the AP realizes that. And Xavier Worthy. I get last season wasn't great. I know Sark has come out and said that he had a broken hand for half the season. You have to believe with more depth in the wide receiver room, with another year of experience under Quinn Ewers, that Xavier Worthy is going to have a much better year this season. And I will say there is somebody still not on this list, and I believe it is because, you know, the AP, and you can tell, not a lot of Big 12 players on this list. So Jaylan Ford, not on this list. I do not believe there's a Big 12 defensive player on this list. There may have been one I didn't see. I didn't see it when I looked through quickly. But Jaylan Ford not on this list. Another one to quit and put a little be in his bonnet. Get Jaylan Ford mad before this season. Get Jaylan Ford where he is not happy and he wants to show everybody what he can do, because we saw he came out and said why he stayed is his own motivation. He wanted to come back. He thought that he could have a season that now that he knows what he can do and what the team knows what he can do, that he can play a full season at that level. I think he wants to show it against Alabama. I think he wants to play in a big bowl game and show it out in front of everybody. He wants to play in a college football playoff and show out in front of everybody. But that's one more thing, him not making that list is going to give him a bit more push going into next season. And I'm all for it. We're going to take a break. Before we do, I wanted to play something for me and Robbie. We're going to play something else. I'm going to call an audible and play this instead. I have it pulled aside for it. Bill Little, amazing influence on Texas sports media. And he passed away this weekend. There's been a lot of people talking about what he meant. I'm lucky enough that I got to meet the guy a few times. Being able to work with Craig Way at some games, I was able to meet him when he would come by and say hi. So it's very, thoughts to his family. Appreciate, everything he did for the people around. I did not have as much, I didn't work with him as much as some other guys. So I wanted to let Ian Rod B, who've known him for longer and worked with him, tell you they talked about it this morning on Ian Rod B, about the importance and the legacy of Bill Little.
Obviously, our thoughts and prayers, sincerest condolences to the Little family and to his loved ones. There were so many people close to Bill Little because he had been around for so long. I mean, he was pretty much a fixture in tape. Kind of took him for granted, actually, and his great historic knowledge. I said he was quite possibly the greatest historian. He is the greatest historian in Texas, Longhorn sports history. And yeah, I hope, that everybody who got a chance to interact with Bill Little, and honestly, it had been too long since I had seen Bill Little and hung out with him. I hope, everybody, got a chance to really enjoy the knowledge that he could give you about almost any subject when it came to Texas sports. Always learn something. I remember doing research, and whether it be a rabbit hole I went down about stats or about a player, and thinking to myself, man, I don't have enough background on this. I need to go talk to Bill Little. Yeah. I need to have a conversation about Bill Little about this subject, and I know he would give me some insight, and I know he would give me some type of wisdom about where to go with the subject matter. So he will be missed. There's no question about it. But what you want to do in your life, because we all have to obviously go down that road, is have a positive impact on others, so that when you are no longer here, people will remember you and be inspired by what you did. There's no doubt Bill Little had a positive impact on so many people for so many years. So it is a celebration of Bill Little more than anything. Of course, he'll be missed. But
no question. 81 years old and a true Longhorn legend, without a doubt. We'll have some tributes for him throughout the morning. And, of course, upon word of that, most people got word early Saturday morning after the overnight Friday announcement. But so many, condolences pouring in. Mack Brown, who is, if you saw Mack Brown back when Mack was the head coach, you saw Bill Little pretty close
all the time.
Behind him.
Exactly.
He had a tweet that said, "So saddened to hear of the passing of the Texas legend. There's nobody who cared more about the Longhorns. We lost a great man. Send our deepest condolences to Bill's family and friends. Rest in peace." And I thought, to your point, our friend Mike Finger, the columnist down with the San Antonio Express-News, a UT graduate himself, wrote it best on a tweet, said, "It sounds ridiculous to say, but when hearing about the loss of Bill Little and wanting to put his life into proper historical UT context, my first instinct was to call Bill Little." He knew more about the program and the people in it than anyone who ever lived. Rest in peace.
Agreed. Exactly.
I mean, that's pretty well said. And that's true. And someone who has done this radio gig since, the late 90s, got many a call or message from Bill Little. Hey, a little quick note. I would say something, or it would be a little off. He'd always in a kind way.
No question.
In a kind way.
Yes.
Or just want to inform you a little bit more on something. Bill was always great and an ambassador for the program and the university. where he graduated from, and oversaw most of Darrell Royals' tenure, all of Mack Brown, and all of it through 2014. Before his retirement. And as I said in the headlines, I mean, the press box at Darrell K. Royal and at Disch Falk Field are the Bill Little, and in honor of Bill Little for all that he did for so long. But
deservedly so.
There you go. Rest in peace, Bill Little. Thoughts with his family. Very lucky to have been able to meet him. We're going to come back and wrap up the show here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, hornfm.com, and the Horn app. Wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn. Went a little over there, so we're going to have to get out real quick. Some shows to check out tonight for last call. Soul Man Sam is at Antone's, a legend in this town. He came from Memphis, but he's a legend now here. Flyjack is at Seaboys. And check out the Ravens and Commanders tonight. Ravens really good in preseason. Does it matter? No. The record changes every year, but they're really good at preseason. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and playing along with us on the Specs text line. We'll be back tomorrow with more Sports Complex for you. Until then, be kind to each other. Keep yourself safe. Keep your underwear clean. And we'll see you tomorrow right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn.